Welcome to Conversate, our podcast where we engage in conversation. And on this week's episode, Aaron and Kevin are having a conversation about this phrase of Jesus, the last will be first and the first will be last. Maybe you wondered what that means and how it's applied in our lives. Is it applied to us? Well, those are the things that Kevin and I are talking about today. And as always, it's our goal in this podcast that you would take some of the things that you're hearing us talk about and that you would go and start a conversation with somebody else so that you can have those spiritual conversations. So as always, we hope you enjoy this conversation. Kevin.
Aaron.
Oh, that was so gentle.
So delicate. That's like the lightest tink that's ever happened.
Ding.
I was nervous after last week's mug.
Oh, I know.
Sorry to bring that up again, buddy. But.
Did I ever tell you about how I have a problem with breaking things, even things that are unbreakable?
Yes.
Have I ever told you some of these stories?
Yes, you have. And there's one that stands out in my mind, but I can't remember what it is.
Well,
friends in a room.
Yeah, so I don't know if I told on this podcast, but
probably not. You should share one.
I will. All right. So it was on my vicarage, my internship in Denver, Colorado. We didn't have any wine glasses at our house, and my parents came to visit. And I forget what store my mom went to, but she was at the store, and there was a guy doing a demonstration of these quote unquote unbreakable wine glasses, not plastic, actual glass, some specially engineered thing. And they had you like at this demonstration booth grab the wine glasses by the stem or the little thingy on the bottom, and you could hit the bells of the wine glass part together, and they would just go ding and not break.
But wait, there's more. It's my imagination of the cellar.
So my mom bought 2 of these wine glasses, and we had them at our vicarage house.
Hook, line, sinker.
Anytime that people would come over, I'd be like, guys, you got to check this out. I would get the 2 wine glasses out, clank them together, and they'd be like, wow, I'd be like, they're unbreakable wine glasses. So there, one time my college roommate, and I don't remember, I think it was his new wife. I think they had just gotten married. They came to visit us. It was like the first trick I wanted to show him. He got into our house, and I was like, dude, check this out. I grabbed 2 wine glasses out of the cupboard, grab them by the handles, go boom, and they just shatter all over. I didn't preface it at all saying like these are unbreakable wine glasses. I just
wanted the shock value.
Yeah, so I just grabbed them, smashed them, and he was like, his dumbfounded look on his face was like, Why
would you do this?
What do you think? What did you think was going to happen? Yeah.
Hey man, watch this.
I was like,
why would you do this?
I don't know. Should I tell you?
You did grab the right glasses, right? Like you grabbed the unbreakable ones.
They were the only wine glasses we had.
Yeah. Because all the other ones were broken.
Yeah. I did a similar thing. Also in the seminary, because remember Nalgene water bottles?
Oh, yeah.
They were those 32-ounce water bottles that were supposedly unbreakable.
That's right.
Well, when I was in college, my buddies and I would do things to try to break those Nalgene water bottles.
Of course.
And we went to a buddy's farm and did all kinds of experiments, like dropping it off a silo and shooting it with guns and running it over with a tractor and things like that. I can tell you all the empirical data of what breaks a Nalgene and what doesn't. But so when I was at the seminary, my wife had bought me not a Nalgene, it was an Eddie Bauer brand water bottle, but it also said virtually indestructible or whatever.
Yeah.
So fill it up with 32 ounces of water. It's my first year at the seminary, and I'm going to an intramural volleyball game. And I don't know these people all that well because it's like right away in the fall, my first year at the seminary. And I walk in, and I say to my team, I was like, hey guys, check this out. I've got 32 ounces of water. I throw it as hard as I can against the concrete wall. It just exploded. And 32 ounces of water doesn't seem like a lot when you got it in a bottle.
Yeah.
But when it's all over a wooden gym floor, it's so much water. And again, all the people look at me because I didn't preface it. No context. It was just like, check this out.
Yeah.
I was like,
this sounds familiar.
Yeah, they checked it out.
I imagine you with like the dumbfounded look, just like, how is this? How does this keep happening?
that one happened before the wine glass thing.
Oh,
but-
no kidding. That's funny.
So,
Hey,
anyways, cheers.
cheers, man. You know what else you're good at breaking? The ice. So, welcome to the Conversate podcast,
yeah.
guys.
Is that what we're doing? I just telling the stories.
Everyone's got dumbfounded now.
Well,
Well, I mean, that's funny because, the one was a friend from college, so you weren't breaking the ice on that one, but
no. Yeah, he had been there for some of those Nalgene trial things, so we
Yeah.
were able to talk about it.
hey, this is a little bit of a non sequitur, but just curious, is there a disciple of Jesus in the scriptures that you're like, oh, I think I'm like that guy? Like, you ever read one and you're like, yeah, he kind of reminds me of me.
I mean, we only hear enough about mostly Peter, So,
This is a question. I'm trying to think. It's like a leading question.
yeah.
Yeah. But Peter was kind of that way.
I think so.
And
I
this
mean, he puts himself out there.
Yeah, exactly. Like, goes for it.
Yeah.
He's like, guys, watch this. It sinks
Yeah, right.
immediately. No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it really is just him and like Thomas, right?
And Judas.
Yeah, I suppose.
mean,
No one's really probably like, oh,
James and John's mom.
which disciple do you reminds you of you? Oh, Judas. Like, you probably don't get that answer a whole lot.
Thaddeus.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Well, cool, man.
yeah. Well, it's good to be back on the brown couch with you
That's
again
right.
this week, and
Yeah.
we're getting close to Holy Week, and so
Yeah.
as we're trekking through the Gospel of Matthew, we've got to divide it up a little bit here, kind of coming into Holy Week, where
Right.
with this last Sunday, I did 19 and 20, and I think coming up on Palm Sunday,
Yep.
we're gonna do 21.
That's it. Yep.
Yeah, and then Jesus has some of these discourses of teaching in some of those middle chapters. Like, I can't remember if it starts in 22, but 23, 24, 25. It's
Yep.
a lot of kind of teaching, end times, judgment type language. And then we move into Maundy Thursday, chapter 26, Good Friday, chapter 27, and Easter and the Great Commission is chapter 28. So yeah, where I was preaching in 19 and 20, Jesus is not to Jerusalem. At the beginning, I mean, for most of Matthew's gospel, like geographically, Jesus is mostly like in Galilee, which is north of Jerusalem, by the Sea of Galilee. And so now in like 19 and 20, he is on the eastern side of the Jordan River. So he's not yet gone into technically into Israel. He's in the region of, or I don't know, I guess they didn't really call it Israel at that time, but he's in the region of Judea.
Okay.
So, but on the other side of the Jordan River, while he's doing this teaching and stuff. It's later in chapter 20. No, does 21 start right away with Palm Sunday?
Yep. Triumphal entry. I
so
think
it is
right
in the
there.
latter part of chapter 20. He crosses over and is in Jericho, and there's these two blind men who see him and cry out. And so, anyways, my point in saying all of that is Jesus is getting close to Jerusalem.
He's getting close, guys.
And so in Matthew's gospel, actually in all the gospels, you see the intentionality of them in this movement of Jesus towards the cross. And so even geographically, that's happening. He's getting closer and closer
Yeah.
to the cross.
And I think it's cool too. Just, we call it Holy Week. And I think for most of us, when we think of Holy Week, we think, oh yeah, of course, it's like that week, like right before Easter, like in the church year. But like literally the gospel writers also, like you're saying, they're pointing to the cross and to this week in particular by really narrating almost each day of this week. Like they zoom in super close. Whereas before this, I mean, whole months can go by when you're not really noticing the text. Here, it's like, no, we're looking at 1 week basically of Jesus' a life. And so we're going to walk with Jesus, as it were, moving forward, into Jerusalem and to that Last Supper with his disciples and to the cross and then to the empty tomb. So
Yeah.
need to spend that time with him.
Yeah. And so, in this teaching we were looking at yesterday, not yesterday.
You probably, if you're listening to this Conversate podcast, likely yesterday you were like, man, I need to re-listen to that sermon again just because it's Tuesday. And I'm like, I need a
Yesterday.
sermon fix.
Anyways, spoiler alert. We don't record this on Wednesday when we release it.
This is not live, guys.
It may be Monday. Maybe.
Maybe.
All right. Anyways, this last Sunday when I was preaching on 19 and 20, Jesus he's talking about the first will be last and the last will be first. Mostly because this rich young guy comes up to him, and as I said in the sermon, with a heart problem, with the wrong kind of heart. And that's the whole point of everything that I preached on. It's all because of this one event where he, essentially is claiming to be perfect and have a lot of money. And so he's kind of saying to Jesus, I'm in, right?
Come on. Yeah, come on. And even the disciples, it's not like this guy is totally, out of his mind to imagine this, right? It's not like he's like, well, this crazy guy who's, hypothesizing this. What a loony. Because even the disciples afterward are like, what if he can't be saved? We're toast.
Yeah,
it's kind of their reaction. I mean, they're kind of like, yeah, Jesus, this guy we should get this guy. He would be good for the press.
Oh yeah. Well, isn't that our human? That's our human inclination, and the disciples do this kind of stuff all the time. I mean, it's when they're at Mary and Martha's. I get things jumbled up in my head. It's at Mary and Martha's house where they anoint his head with oil, and Judas says, we could have sold that money, or sold that perfume and given the money to the poor.
So I didn't know this because I just looked at this with our confirmation kits, and the reason why it's jumbled in your head is because it's in two different gospels. It's not like clear who it is in one of the gospels, but in another it makes it seem like it is in the home of Mary and Martha.
Okay.
Like that's where the story happens in one of the gospels.
Okay.
But anyways, yeah. So this woman comes in, dumps a bunch of ointment on Jesus, and she's a sketchy woman, right?
I think, yeah. Anyways, so they do it there, right, where it's like, we could have had a bunch of money and done good stuff with it even. We could have given it to the poor. Like that was, what better intention is there? Right? And so I think they're struggling with that. The disciples are, right? I mean, is it not that we should strive to be good stewards of what we have, and should we not? I mean, this is the question, right? Should we not try? Jesus, are you telling us not to have money? Should we not have any money and not be good? Because it seems like this guy has been good. He's been a good steward of what's been given to him. He's he's rich and he claims to have lived a good life. Isn't that what we're supposed to do?
Yeah, and maybe the question is, if we're able to live a good life, if we're able to steward well, or if we're able to live up, let's say to the law of God, is who do we owe that to? Who do we owe that sort of spiritual power to? Because this guy's basically saying look at my resume, I'm in, right? Clear,
right? Yeah. And hopefully we know by now that. Hopefully you are listening, you know this, but maybe this is news to you, that those things do not get you into heaven. Right? I mean, I think often of the Pharisee and the tax collector as another example of the first will be last and the last will be first. It's a parable that Jesus tells where a Pharisee comes and basically stands in God's presence, walks right up to the front of the temple and is like, "Dear God, I'm good.
I'm great.
I give my tithes. I do my prayers. I do all this stuff. Aren't you glad, God, that I'm not like that tax collector sitting in the back row who's a cheat and lousy? And look at him. He can't even lift his face out of his own hands. He's so miserable. God, I'm pretty good. And the tax collector, I mean, he can only muster the words, God be merciful to me, a sinner. And Jesus says it's that man, the tax collector, who goes home righteous. Right? So
Yeah, he was more justified.
more justified. Yeah.
Than the righteous. So, I mean, maybe it'd be worthwhile for us because we're kind of talking about this comment of Jesus: the first shall be last, and the last shall be 1st. Like, maybe we should flesh that out, or just be real clear. Like, what is this talking about? Because, like, when you honestly, and this is the reason why, if you notice, I chuckled on this podcast. I also chuckled probably in church because whenever I hear this line, all I think about is, there's gonna be so many church potlucks in heaven I'm gonna be first at. Because and did you share that with your dad too? How like you guys would try and get to the front of the line like during the prayers?
I wrote it in an email to the church like last week.
That made me laugh because growing up, that was my dad would always. It was always our family last, you know. Yeah. And I swear that this line came in there at some point, you know, the first shall be last and the last shall be first. I'm always like, all right, first in heaven.
Well, you know what happened? You know what happened to me yesterday after the first service? You know, I was talking to everybody, got to get my robe off, and then I go in to grab a cup of coffee before teaching Bible class. I get in there, no donuts.
Oh, yeah.
And the people working in the kitchen were like, well, they ate a lot of them. We set aside these ones for after the second service so there would be some. And I was like, but, you know, I thought that if I went last, there would still be some for me. Like, I thought that would be reward, you know. And they're like, we will here. So they got me a donut off the second service tray. So.
Oh, that's sweet. That's sweet. And there were still a couple of spare after a late service, so it'll work out. But Jesus, you know, like, I mean, let's try and sort this out a little bit. Like, he's not necessarily saying if you go last in things in this life, you get first ups in heaven, right?
No. I mean, it's like, I don't know, like so many of the things that Jesus has to say, it's a heart issue. And I don't just mean the organ that pumps your blood. I mean the center of your life and existence. But how are you in your relationship with God? What does that faith look like? And so, you know, for this man, he just starts in the wrong place. He starts in the wrong place instead of acknowledging his sin and his need of Jesus to be the one who's good on his behalf. He starts by elevating himself. Right? We can never start by elevating ourselves. We can only be elevated, or the biblical word exalted, by Jesus. So we always have to start from a place of humility when we approach Jesus, not from a state of, you know, exalting ourselves or boasting in our own ability. And so that's, again, we need to see all this in context too. I mean, the rich young man, I don't think we know his religious affiliation. I don't think the text tells us. I didn't pay attention to that detail.
Not that I recall. I mean,
like if it doesn't say he's a Pharisee or something like that.
Right.
But in so many of these conversations, Jesus is dealing with Pharisees, with scribes. Basically, they're if we're talking about, you know, those who are in the kingdom at this point, or should be, these are people who know Yahweh.
That's right.
They are children of Israel, children of Abraham. They are students of the scriptures. They're people who have devoted their lives to trying to live in accordance with the law of God. And so it seems like they're in first place, right? It seems like, yeah, those are the religious people. Those are the
holy ones,
the good people, right?
Yeah.
Of course,
the chosen ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course they've got it right. Of course they know the right answers. Of course they're
maybe we would even
saved.
Imagine that they're like kind of got access to God more than the unrighteous or the unholy. It's kind of like, I can't pray, I'm too broken. But that guy can maybe pray.
Especially like prostitutes and tax collectors, and like those aren't lepers. Like those are Gentiles. A Canaanite woman. Like those are. I mean, this is crass, but like those are like throwaway people. They don't have a relationship with God. Like I mean, if they do, it can't be much. I mean, that's what the Pharisees would think.
Yeah, even people with like physical maladies, you get the fellow who was born blind, and they assume that it's due to his spiritual condition.
Yeah.
You know, that someone who basically is exhibiting a hard life, that this is somehow caused by their own doing. Basically, every human should be able to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Every human should be able to look a certain way, act a certain way, live a certain way. And if you can't, it's fundamentally your fault, your problem.
Yeah, and we love to point fingers, you know, in hindsight or at history and be like, oh, we're so much better than they were. But then when we do like us thinking we're so much better off than those Pharisees
Right.
were. But as soon as we do that, we need to check our own.
Yeah, we're doing the same thing that the rich young man's doing.
Yeah.
We're saying, hey, look at my credentials.
Yeah.
Like, these guys didn't get it, but I get it.
Yeah.
These guys were
They did.
last, but I'm not last.
Yeah.
That's honestly to me what is kind of frightening about stories like this one, like the parable of the prodigal son, these stories that Jesus tells, talking about, like the Gospels in a whole, to some degree, they're talking about, the story is, the people who you thought would have been the closest to God, known his heart, been the ones to be, those who would go and bear fruit in the world on behalf of God or the king, right? They're the ones that are not. And it comes out of this sort of like, this belief that because of my status, it's like of course I am part of the in crew, And so there's kind of this like tension I feel, like as a Christian, because like we one big thing that we speak in our tradition, right, is that like, that you're in by your baptism, right? By the acts of God, by his work in your life. But sometimes we can almost treat those things like, I don't know, excuses not to really engage with God.
Yeah, and I don't want to sidetrack your point too quickly, but I want to be very clear, because I know what you're saying, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you're not trying to cast doubt on that we should cast doubt on our own salvation, and that we should be worried, am I in? You're not saying that.
Well, like, I'm only saying that insofar as, like, I never want people to doubt God's work in their life by virtue of what he claims to do for you, right? That's what we have to cling to.
Right. And that, so I don't want to detract too quick, but I do want to make the move as Jesus does to explain what he has said to the rich young man. And that's why he tells the parable.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's go there.
Okay.
Because this might help clarify.
Because Jesus says this statement to the rich young man, the disciples are confused by it. And so Jesus, in order to clarify, it's not the fact that you're good. It's not the fact that you've got money or not money. Here's the deal. Here's the deal. It's like this master of a vineyard who hires workers. Hires workers at the beginning of the day, middle day, end of the day. At the end of the day, everybody gets paid the same amount. The people who worked all day, they get mad at the master because they don't think that's fair. Because they worked more, they worked longer, they sweated it out, they dedicated their lives to following Jesus.
Yeah,
right. To the I mean, I expounded there too quickly, but like the Pharisees would have said, we dedicated our whole lives to this thing.
Yeah.
Those workers in the vineyard, we dedicated our whole day to working for you. Right. And these guys, 1 hour, come on.
Yeah.
Right. And the master says, at the beginning of the day, you didn't have any work.
And you were fine with this, by the way.
Yeah. You agreed to this.
Yeah.
It's a fair wage for you. Yeah. It was a fair wage for them, but nobody hired them. Right? I was the only one who hired them. Maybe they wanted to work and nobody would hire them, and so I gave them work and I gave them a good day's wage because nobody hired them.
Yeah.
So that's the deal. Okay, so the amount that you get paid, the amount of in that you have into the kingdom is not determined by anything you do, leave undone. Mm-hmm. It's determined by the master.
Right.
Okay, so that's the point. That's the point of this whole thing. Is Jesus is trying to just make it very clear. He's the one who dictates who gets forgiveness. He's the one who dictates who gets saved. He's the one who dictates who gets grace. And we know scripturally that Jesus wants all people to have that.
Yeah, and he's abundantly generous with those things, forgiveness, salvation. He's abundantly invitatory, invites all people, like we're saying.
In particular, he hangs out with those who are the least.
Right.
Who are, according to the Pharisees, who think they're in first, they would be in last place. And so Jesus is telling all of those people, I mean, because this is a hard word to those who are thinking they're in first.
Right. Exactly.
It's an incredible word to those who are in last.
Exactly. I mean, you kind of wonder, okay, after this day, right? This one day that these workers went and worked for the master, how are, we kind of get a glimpse of how those people who worked all day, how they're talking about the master. We get a glimpse of their opinion of the master, right? And that's not a high one. Yeah. But what do you think those people who came last, what do you think they're saying about the master?
Well, I had more I was going to say about that.
Yeah.
In my sermon, but instead I told a story about somebody that I've been spending time with, who
that's right,
who is an adult, and is just getting to know Jesus, and having her life changed, and I did read this parable with her. It's a true story, and I did very clearly say, I don't know that I've said it to anybody before, but it felt right to say at that time, where it was like, if it were based on like status or based on length of time of knowing Jesus or the quality of your work with Jesus, like I would be better off than you.
You'd be the rich young man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm not. We're at the same place with Jesus.
Yeah.
Right? If you desire him to be your savior, he is. That's it. Boom. All of it's yours.
Yeah. And that's where I think, like, getting back to, like, it's not that I want to cast doubt on our salvation, but I think Jesus makes hard statements for us to kind of do heart checks. Well, that's kind of what you did in the sermon too. Talk about the health of the heart of that rich young man, and he leads him through self-discovery, right? It's good to get our hearts checked up on, right? So like, Jesus says these words that, just maybe make us think about, how much religion can have an effect on, well, it really does. Like the way religions work, they have this effect on the human psyche, which is basically, I know the truth. I'm on the in. I am supposed to go tell others about the truth that I know, therefore you need something that I have. I'm better than you, because I've been validated by my religion. And so now let me come down to your level, sort of a thing. So like religions have the sort of capacity to create arrogance, you might say. Arrogance like the rich young ruler, arrogance like the Pharisees. But Christianity is very different. The gospel explodes arrogance, because the whole thing is like, we don't have a monopoly on truth. Like truth has a monopoly on us, right? Jesus is king. He's in that position of authority. Anything I have, just like that rich young ruler, any of his ability to keep the law, if he had done that so well, it all came from God. It wasn't his own doing,
Well, that's what that's what we read in our epistle lesson, Ephesians chapter 2, verse 8, 9, and 10. For by grace you have been saved.
That's right.
Right? By grace through faith. not of your own doing, so that no one may boast. Right? So you're saved by grace. And how do you get that grace? You have faith in it. You just trust it.
Yeah.
It's like God gives you the gift. Faith is you opening that thing and saying, whoa, this is mine?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll live it, you know?
Right.
So by grace through faith, not of your own works. You didn't do anything to earn that. No merit or worthiness in you. He just gives it to you. Because otherwise, if it was based on works, you would boast. Either that, or you'd be self-loathing if your works are not good.
Right. Yeah.
And that's
two traps.
Yeah.
Yeah. Neither's right.
But then Ephesians 2:10 says, we are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, that we might walk in them.
Yeah.
So your works don't save you, but you're still created for good works.
And I mean,
and he creates them for you, and you just walk into them. So I think you know this reality on a daily basis, right? God gives you opportunities. He gives you an opportunity to help somebody out.
yeah.
You know it, right? It's your neighbor, and they're stuck in their driveway, and you look out your window and you see your neighbor stuck in your driveway, and you're like, is somebody else gonna come help them? No, I'm supposed to, really, but I gotta feed the kids. Like I'm sure they're gonna figure it out. Like, no, I should go. No, I think, right? And you would do this whole thing, and that's like God putting a good work in front of you to do. All you got to do is walk into it.
Yeah.
He's put it there. It's on your mind.
Sure. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And you're His good work to do a good work. So, and none of that's going to save you,
Right.
because you probably, at this point, you're already doing it with a bad attitude. So, go do it anyways. That doesn't matter. I don't care about your attitude. Do it anyways. Right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to have a perfect attitude to do a
Right.
good work that God's given to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So it's not your attitude that's going to save you.
Right.
So anyway,
Yeah.
the good works are for the sake of your neighbor who needs you to do them.
Yeah.
Not for your sake.
Right. Right. But that's something I think, would this be fair to say that our works are evidence of our faith? It's not what we rely upon for our salvation, but they're an evidence of the faith that we have.
James will speak that way. This is a famous line, like, faith without works is dead. Jesus even says, he who abides in me will bear much fruit. Jesus says, they'll see you're the salt of the earth. You're the light of the world. City on a hill cannot be hidden. They'll see your good works and glorify your Father who's in heaven. So we're created in Christ Jesus for good works. So they're evidence of our faith, but we have to be careful in that conversation. Really careful, and this is back to the point you made about, like, because Jesus does not want you to doubt your salvation. That's the last thing. He wants you to have assurance.
Yeah.
My grace is sufficient for you. My grace is sufficient for you. So if God's grace is sufficient for you, it's sufficient for you.
That's right. Yeah.
So you don't have to doubt your salvation. Jesus paid for you. He died for you. He rose for you. You believe in him. You are forgiven.
Yeah.
You are set free. And if he sets you free, you're free indeed. So it's like your salvation is secure when you put your trust in Jesus. It is secure. All these heart issues, they don't, and works, all this stuff that doesn't affect your salvation, but it does affect the way that is fully realized in you.
Yeah,
and
that it gets
through
worked out. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's where, like, I want to be very clear here. Like, because I never want people to think either about themselves or about somebody else. Like, they didn't help their neighbor in need. they're probably not really a Christian. You didn't go, you decided to take care of your kids and not go help your neighbor who was stuck in the driveway. That was not the right good work to do. Because taking care of your kids is not good work either.
Oh, it is.
Right. You should. I know. That's the stupid. That's why I'm I'm being facetious. Yeah. So
so it's really easy to get, your mind can kind of get vexed pretty hard and pretty quick.
It's scarily.
Yeah.
Scarily. And that's why I want you to be, I want to be very clear on this.
Yeah.
It's by grace you've been saved.
Right.
By grace you've been saved. God does it. Grace, you've been saved. But you have been created in Christ Jesus for good works that he prepared for you, that you should walk in them.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah.
Well, no, and you went to a good spot too. I think like when you, so even the laborers in the vineyard, you know, I mean, now I'm kind of going a little ways out of what Jesus' point was perhaps, but those guys who were working there for, you know, from the beginning of the day, well, they were still laborers. They were still hired by the master, you know, but they just had a heart issue with it all. That wasn't really.
I mean, they probably didn't until the end of the day. They were probably fine. They knew at the end of the day they were getting $300, and they were probably excited about it all day long, thinking, "Oh man, I'm gonna get my $300."
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I suppose it does seem like, I mean, they were fine with it from the get go. Yeah, so they were fine with it until they discovered that God was going to be just as generous to people they felt like didn't deserve it, right? Yeah. And that's the point. So like, if you feel like you don't deserve the grace, dude, you're in the sweet spot, man. Yeah. That's the people in the 11th hour. They're the ones that seemingly should not deserve the grace.
Right. And that's why I told this story about this person that I've been meeting with who's exploring Christianity. And I explained this grace of God in Jesus Christ and how that's vastly different than any other religion or operating mindset that says, no, you pay your own penalty. Yeah. You justify yourself. And that's when she said, I've never felt so loved and I've never been so at peace.
Yeah. And that's what God comes to offer and to bring.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, and the other thing to remember too is, like, I don't know, if you find yourself, I don't know, grumbling or muttering, or if you look at other people and you kind of have a hard time believing that God could love them, you know, or save them because of how their life looks. That's an invitation to go have a heart-to-heart with the Father, you know?
And with that person.
Sure. Well, I'd get your heart straight before you go talk to that person.
Yeah, but if you've never met somebody that according to worldly standards is low and least and cast down or an outcast from society, and you've not ever gotten to actually have a true relationship with that person and get to see their heart, and especially if they believe in Jesus, to see the depth of their faith that they have trusting in him, that'll change your heart.
Well, and that's, you know, we don't talk about it maybe as much as like baptism and the Lord's Supper, right? These places where God comes to meet us, but the scriptures talk about Jesus kind of showing up almost, as it were, under the skin of our poor brothers and sisters, right? What you do to the poor, you've done to me, you know? So you're absolutely right to encourage that experience. But no, when you do that, you're on equal footing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. And also remember that at the end of the day, our wages, you know, they were going to get paid a denarius. That was like one day's wages, right?
Yeah. And that's why I said $300, even though that's like $25 an hour. And I was like, that's pretty decent. I was talking to my wife about this. She said that she saw a job posting in like the Twin Cities for like a teenager to work at a library getting paid $25 an hour for like a 14-year-old position.
Making bank these days. That's
inflation, man.
Exactly. But the riches that God is giving you is way more than $300.
Yeah.
You know, way more. So,
amen.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, man.
It's a good chat.
Yeah, I'm excited to follow Jesus here as we get closer to Holy Week, and
that's my favorite.
Yeah.
Favorite time of the year, I think. Yeah, at least in the church year.
Awesome. All right, buddy.
Peace out.
Yep.